Now, I've read that Diamonds Are Forever had really positive reviews after it was published in 1956, and while I did enjoy Diamonds Are Forever, I didn't feel much of an impact with it. One positive, however, Tiffany Case. Tiffany Case is possibly the best Bond girl so far in the series. She's just a really well written and compelling character that you just want to find out what she's up to and what she's saying next, and is possibly equaling Bond as the most interesting character in this book. It's very different from the movie. You do have Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd in the novel too, but they are referred to only as Wint and Kidd, and they are completely different tonally. They aren't camp, they're very sort of gritty and violent, and they're a genuine force to be reckoned with. Spectre do not appear in this, rather the Spangled Mob are the threat. They're basically a big old mobster group who are running this oil pipeline and smuggling diamonds. So it's kind of got the broad strokes, very broad strokes of the movie the same, but it is basically its own thing. If we look at the chapter points, first chapter, nice little touch, is called The Pipeline Opens. And the last chapter is called The Pipeline Closes, which I think is a really nice detail. Also, chapter 19 is called Spectreville. Now, Spectre do not make an appearance in this novel, for they have not yet been introduced into the movie, rather book series. So it's interesting that the movie obviously has Spectre in it. The book, the original book, which came first, doesn't, but there's a chapter called Spectreville, which I find very interesting indeed. I think tonally speaking, it's a very, very solid book, but it doesn't feel quite as bold or as interesting as the first three, and this may be controversial because, again, I had read that this book was really popular and that people really liked it, and, it's the best thing since sliced bread, or whatever. And I haven't read any reviews of this. I just know the general perception of it is positive after I finished the book. I've finished it last night, so And the fact of the matter is that this book is good. I enjoyed it. It's Fleming. Okay, all the things that Fleming did well in the first three books carries over to a degree. So the descriptive stuff is still good. The setting of kind of the mood and the tone is still good. Bond is pretty great, but I find it a bit disappointing. The book even kind of tells us that the book is going to be exciting and dark and gritty and all that jazz at the very beginning, when M basically warns Bond that this will be really dangerous and do you definitely want to get involved in this mission or not? And this is the most dangerous mission you've ever been on, and you read the book and you think, actually, this is no more dangerous than any of his other missions we've seen him go on so far. So it is more like a traditional Bond adventure, unlike Moonraker. Speaking of Moonraker, when Bond and can't remember Bond girl's name, but when Bond is exiled in Moonraker for a few weeks at the end of that novel, that's briefly brought up in this novel, but it doesn't have any bearing on the plot. All of the novels so far have been basically standalone, which I'm a little bit disappointed by. I hope at some stage there's some linking of story threads in the books, because having them be standalone is disappointing when something so big and climactic is just referenced in a few lines of dialogue and that's it. Moonraker doesn't get much of isn't remembered. It's like it never happened, really, which is a shame. And I know this book should be its own story, but Moonraker is such a big deal so far in this book canon that you can't just forget about it completely. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame. Also, the last chapter, Tiffany Case is just kind of not in it at all, and she's mentioned, and she was such an important part of the book, and she wasn't in every chapter, but you'd expect her to be in the finale. And the finale itself I found quite rushed and a bit anticlimactic, actually, a bit kind of like the end. You get to the chapter and it says, the pipeline closes, and you realise that you're on the last chapter, and you think, really? You haven't really built up to it in any way, you're just suddenly on the last chapter. It's a bit weird. But as a book... Oh, and Wint and Kidd, by the way, are really well done, and they're really properly chilling and quite well written, actually. Again, it does things quite well, this book. It is a good book. It's probably better than Live and Let Die, but it's not as interesting as Casino Royale and Moonraker. It doesn't even touch those two, in my opinion. It is a good book. I would only recommend it if you were already reading the series. If you wanted to start on this, for example, if you really liked the movie and wanted to read the original novel version, don't bother. It's kind of not, maybe that's my opinion, but it's not really worth your time. It's just kind of there, it's fine, and you read it, and it's got good stuff in it. There's nothing in the book that is outrageously awful beyond Tiffany Case's bizarre omission from the final chapter, but it's just kind of decent, and that's it, really, to be honest. Anyway, the next one is the far more iconic and famous novel From Russia with Love, which was John F. K's favourite, or at least one of his favourite novels. And I'll see you then. Bye.